Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm Michael Figura, Vice President of Operations here at OAG. And if you notice the email invite for this particular webinar, we wanted to give it kind of a spooky, scary theme just to celebrate the holiday Halloween season. But that's not to lead anyone to believe that there's anything scary or spooky about the ConfirmBOD. However, it is arguably one of our more mysterious BODs in our thousands of BODs that ship with our standard, and that's simply because it's a functional acknowledgement, and therefore it doesn't really look like the rest of the kind of business related BODs that you find in our standard. So let's get over to the next slide. We'll start talking about what it is. So a functional acknowledgement is three things. It says, I received your message. I can read it, meaning it's well-formed. And it says I can process it, meaning that the data inside of it is not offending the schema if you're running. So basically, the ConfirmBOD is the result of some basic initial processing of the message. So System A sends a process purchase order to System B. System B is going to respond. If it's instructed to, and we'll talk about that in just a second, it will respond with a ConfirmBOD response message, right? So that means that tells the sender of the original message, whoever on the other side has received it, they can read it, it's well-formed, and they can process it, the data is valid. But it can also mean the bottom three things here, meaning I received your message, I can't read it, it's not well-formed, something happened, something broke somewhere, or I can't process it, the data inside, the data types are incorrect, or it's not passing basic schema validation. So you'll notice the trend here that it's always a response to the first bullet point, I received your message. That's never going to change, and that's just simply because of the nature of this asynchronous bidirectional request response paradigm. So the ConfirmBOD is always a response to some message like a process purchase order or process item master or what have you. There are times where you probably don't want to use a ConfirmBOD. That would be a good example of like a get show relationship, which is popular on the web. So you send a get request, get purchase order, and then the show purchase order is the response, and so there's not really a need for a ConfirmBOD. But when you're doing typical business transactions across various systems in the enterprise, ConfirmBOD is a really, really powerful mechanism to say everything's okay or everything's not okay. Also, it's not always just the result of basic schema validation. You can do more advanced things. Some of our members and implementers are going way past schema validation and doing a staged set of validation where they have custom code lists that are being validated for accuracy and making sure that the data is valid. And that we also have customers doing business rule implementation where as the message passes schema validation, it then goes to a business rule engine to make sure all of the business data is passing the business rules that are defined. So don't think of it as just schema validation. And on the next slide, let's talk about for a second what the ConfirmBOD is not. It is not the equivalent of the acknowledgement verb or acknowledge verb. The acknowledge verb occurs further downstream. So if you think about this in a processing pipeline, System A sends a process purchase order to System B. System B is going to pick it up, make sure it's valid, make sure the data passes and the validation is good, or if it's bad, it's going to generate a ConfirmBOD immediately and send back either the success information or the failure information. And then that message will go further down into the processing by the actual business application. There's usually an adapter there that converts from OAG's format into the proprietary system format or the format that the system endpoint is expecting. And that's kind of where you start seeing the acknowledgement, if the acknowledgement was requested by the sender. So they're very different. They're similar, but they're very different. The ConfirmBOD is much more related to the kind of the validation of the message itself, whereas the acknowledge verb may be more detailed and involve actual business-related information, like you've tried to order a part, but that part has been discontinued or something like that. So they are a little bit different in that in their out-of-the-box nature. So the ConfirmBOD is a BOD, just like all of our other thousands of BODs. So it's going to inherit from the same basic structure. You're going to open it up and you're going to see the application area and the data area. Now, it's important to note here on the application area, the originating sender of the first message or the process message that's eliciting the ConfirmBOD response, they dictate in their application area under the sender node that the person that receives it should in fact send back a confirmation ConfirmBOD. Now that's done inside of our confirmations code area under sender. This is all still in the application area. So the sender, System A, is sending a process purchase order, and in their application area, there's a confirmation code that's going to say one of 5 things: always, never, on success, on error, or on modification. And we're not going to go into those control codes on this webinar, but I will say that if it says always, then that system is always, the receiving system is always going to be sending back, or always expected to send back, a ConfirmBOD. Now, what does that mean inside the actual ConfirmBOD? It's important to note here that if you don't send that confirmation, set that confirmation code to never, then you could create an infinite loop, because you're sending a ConfirmBOD and you've accidentally set the confirmation code to always, which means the receiving system is now instructed to send a ConfirmBOD for your ConfirmBOD. And it's pretty easy to get a nasty cyclic loop right there. So always remember, inside your ConfirmBOD, if you're using confirmation codes in your systems, you need to set the confirmation code to never, so that the receiving system of the ConfirmBOD does not generate another ConfirmBOD. All right, now we get back down into the data area of the ConfirmBOD, and we can see that the data area has the verb confirm, and then followed by after that is the BOD. And the confirm verb has a special note here that you won't find in the other business object documents in OAGIS, and that is the original application area. So this is a place for you, for your admin team or your development team, to say, okay, whatever the message came across, whether it's a process purchase order or what have you, it has its own application area, and we're going to preserve that in the response ConfirmBOD. If you and your team decide that that's something you want to do. Most people do it because the original application area contains things that are really important, like the BOD ID, which is your transaction ID. It contains things like your correlation ID. Obviously, the correlation ID is very, very powerful and required for long-running transactions. And so it also contains, obviously, the original sender, original receiver. But on your ConfirmBOD, at the ConfirmBOD application area, you're going to take the sender and receiver and basically swap them. So the original application area is untouched; it's unchanged. But the ConfirmBOD's application area does contain some of the original information. It's just swapping them. The sender is now the receiver, etc. So you can think of the ConfirmBOD as a response that happens in one of 3 ways. And this is where if you're brand new to the ConfirmBOD, it is a little bit puzzling at first, the way that these nodes exist, because they look like they're not mutually exclusive, even though they are intended to be mutually exclusive. You should be sending a BOD success message, meaning the entire message succeeded, a BOD failure message, meaning the entire message failed, or a partial BOD failure message, which means part of the message failed and part of it is still valid. I don't see a lot of implementation of the partial BOD failure message. Most of our implementers do a pass or fail. Where in instances where you would see a partial BOD failure message is where you are doing large batch synchronizations and processing of thousands and thousands of BODs in a single transaction, in a single XML instance message, and it's just not efficient for you to fail all of them when you can fail 99% of them that failed, or you can succeed 99% of them and only have 1% that actually failed go back in the response message. So that's like I said, not as popular as you might think, because it becomes a little daunting to keep those systems in sync if you're just passing and failing partial messages. So inside of the BOD, if we expand that, you can see now here inside of XML Spy's view that we have a BOD failure message, a BOD success message, and a partial BOD failure message. And like I said earlier, these they don't have to be considered mutually exclusive, but they should be. If we used to support the choice node in XML in our standard, but we deprecated it for several different reasons that I'm not going to go into. But in OAGIS 10, and all versions of 10, we do not support the choice nodes. So you just have to remember, you're going to choose BOD failure if there's a failure. If you're failing the whole thing, you're going to choose BOD success if you're succeeding the whole thing. And if you do want to go down that rabbit hole, you can do partial BOD failure message, and that would be the choice of the last node there. So only one of these three nodes should exist at any time, even though that's not enforced at the schema level. The processing result code, so that's sitting right here above BOD failure message, is a nice handy place to signify which of the sibling nodes the processing receiving system should expect. So in other words, processing result code is a handy place for you to put the word failure or the word success. You can even use our score tool to create a custom code list that enforces those values. So if the receiving system of this ConfirmBOD sees the word success as an example, then they know the next sibling node that they should expect is BOD success message. And vice versa, if they see the word failure, they're going to expect the BOD failure message. And now we get inside the BOD failure message. And I'm not going to duplicate the slides for BOD success and partial BOD success, failure, because they're exactly identical. They actually they use the exact same inheritance model, so they're all the same. So inside of BOD failure message here, we can see a series of sub messages. Now this gets a little puzzling on your first attempt to use the ConfirmBOD, because you have a BOD failure message, but then you have these 0 to many nodes inside of here. And it's really up to the implementer which of these you're going to use. Obviously, if you're inside of a BOD failure message, you're probably not going to see the noun success message implemented here. There could be advanced implementations where you might, but it's not something that I've seen. So if you're inside BOD failure message, you're more than likely going to see error process message or noun failure message, whichever the implementation team decides to use. You can also see warning process message here as well, in cases where you have something that could be an issue but doesn't technically create a breakdown in the message processing. So you're going to choose one of these, and the reason they're 0 to many is because they are BOD instance related. So you might have a process purchase order message that was sent from system A to system B. System B opens it up and sees that there are hundreds of process purchase order instances within that, each one with their own individual individual purchase order related business data, line items, etc. So if, let's say you had 100 and you're failing the entire message because you got to record process purchase order number 17, then you would put an error message in here. You have the ability to say, I'm going to create a noun failure message or a success message for every single one of those. Now remember, if you do successes and failures, you're probably going to want to choose the partial that we discussed earlier instead of the flat BOD failure message. But in this particular implementation, like I said, they all implement the same exact subnodes. And so you have the ability to give detailed information per BOD instance, and that's why these nodes all occur 0 to many times. And that's how it works. That's the ConfirmBOD. It's not quite as complicated as people think, but like I said, without a little detailed explanation like we've just heard, it can be a little bit confusing at first. It's very, very flexible, very powerful, and it's really up to the implementation team how far they want to go. Do you want to create your own error codes, for example, that help your production support team more quickly analyze what error occurred and why? Do you want to do partials? That's a complicated scenario, but some people do it. Okay, it looks like no one does have any questions. That means I did a decent job on my explanation, and I want to thank all of you for attending this webinar. And if you do happen to have any questions, you can always shoot them to member.services@oagi.org. Have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll talk to you soon.